Hi, and welcome to the Maria Sanchez Show on KDTV.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We welcome you each and every segment as we explore about Ventura County, by Ventura County, and for Ventura County. Today in studio, I'm pleased to have a frequent guest on my radio program, and this is a first-time in studio guest. His name is Glenn Sachs. He's the Director of Fathers and Family. I lovingly call Glenn the men's rights advocate. And so often there are stories in the news that always talk about women and poor women and mothers and wives. And Glenn's here kind of to let us know about what Fathers and Families is all about and why he became a champion of men and their rights as either domestic partners, husbands, and fathers. And welcome, Glenn. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Can you give us a brief origination of Fathers and Families, please?
Well, you know, as you're probably aware, you know, we have a major problem in the family court system in that when there's a divorce or a separation, often one parent, usually the father, but not always, is pushed to the margins of his or her children's lives. And our organization was founded in response to this problem, basically to reform the laws so that after a divorce or separation, children can maintain the loving bonds that they share with both parents. We've been around for 13 years. We're a national organization. We do a lot here in California, a lot in Sacramento in terms of legislation. And that's what we believe in. We believe that children have two parents and they should be able to maintain those relationships regardless of whether the parents are married or divorced or separated.
Now, when you mention parents, are you speaking the traditional male-female parents, or does your organization get involved with homosexual relationships?
Well, you know, it's funny because we've actually been doing a lot, you know, we've actually done a lot in relation to gay and lesbian divorces in the past couple of years. I mean, that's kind of the new thing now that more and more gays and lesbians are getting married and they're having children one way or the other, sometimes through artificial insemination, or maybe they had a child from a previous relationship. And, you know, sad to say that when gays and lesbians break up, often it plays out exactly the way heterosexuals do, you know, with the, you know, the accusations and the vilification and the fighting over money and the fighting over kids and all that. And you know, it's kind of ironic, but we've actually, you know, developed a fairly large lesbian following in the past couple years, because when a lesbian couple breaks up, often the biological mother will try to exclude the social mother from their children's lives. And look, you know, our view is, you know, there are two parents there. They agreed to have the children together. They raised the children together. As long as they're both fit parents, they both should play a meaningful role in the children's lives. Now, we don't defend parents that aren't fit. You know, you might have a parent that they're violent or they're crazy or they're, you know, wired on drugs. I mean, that's a different thing. But vast majority of parents, they love their children. They're good parents. They may not be perfect. None of us are. But we want to preserve their relationships with their children, and that applies to gays and lesbians also.
Okay. Fathers and Families probably didn't start out in that regard, I would imagine. You've evolved as society has evolved.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, 13, 14 years ago, it really wasn't an issue as much as it is now. You know, we've had recently we've had the gay marriage ruling in California, I guess effectively reinstating gay marriage, and it's been a real big issue the past several years. But you're right, we didn't start out that way. And that's not, you know, obviously that's not what most of our constituency is. Most of our constituency are heterosexuals. But, you know, we do care about all parents regardless of sexual orientation.
So tell me, was there a watershed moment 13, 14 years ago that created Fathers and Families? Was there something that was so egregious, heinous, just immoral in your estimation that was like, all right, that's enough, obviously something needs to be done and we need to do something about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was formed by a group of men who, you know, had been basically pushed to the margins of their children's lives, and there had been nothing found to be wrong with them. They weren't found to be bad parents or abusive or violent or anything. Mm-hmm. You know, several of them were medical doctors who were very highly esteemed in the community and had cared for families and children their whole careers. And they found that when they got divorced, all of a sudden they could play very little role in their children's lives. And they were stunned by this. They were shocked by this, as a lot of fathers are when they first go through the family court system. and they decided to do something about it and formed Fathers and Families.
Now, are you speaking about situations where what was dictated by the law or the dissolution wasn't being honored, or that the original decree was definitely marginalizing the parent, and in most cases the father?
Well, it goes both ways. I mean, sometimes it's a case of the court itself allowing one parent, usually the father, but sometimes it's the mother who's marginalized too, and we defend those mothers too. But sometimes it's the court pushing one parent out or allowing one parent to be marginalized. In other cases, the court has done the exact right thing. Your court has granted joint custody and said you're both an important part of your children's lives. You're both going to remain a part of your children's lives. But then one parent doesn't honor the agreement. Maybe does not allow the other parent to see the children, maybe takes the children, moves them far away, or sometimes we see cases where they abduct them or they'll move and they won't let the other parent know where the children are. So it goes both ways. I mean, sometimes it's the problem of the courts, the fault of the courts, or sometimes the courts have tried to be fair, and it's just that the mother or father just will not abide by it.
I've heard cases where and I'm just going to be a gross generalization again, but where the mother would plan great trips and exciting adventures on the exact weekend or weeks that the dad had custody. And so the kids then were like, geez, we can't go skiing because we're supposed to be with dad. That's a bummer. And so that it would be like, she wouldn't necessarily say, no, you can't go, but geez, if you don't go, then I've got this trip planned.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of that, it's not just the mothers doing it to the fathers or fathers who do it to the mothers. They'll stack it, they'll set it up so that whatever the time that they have with the other parent, it's either not going to be enjoyed or the kid is being lured away. Oh, don't you really want to go do this or do that instead? All sorts of different games. And I mean, family court's a very dark, dirty place in some ways. There's a lot of cruel things that people do to each other. And what we want the family court system to do, the number one priority should be to combat this nonsense and preserve the relationship between the children and both parents. But it's not an easy job.
Now, we're going to get into some details about cases that you've either represented or that you've helped to publicize or that you've learned of. And if you want to protect the anonymity of the folks involved, feel free to do that. On our radio program, Glenn would often come visit with us when there was a particular case in the news that you would help vet the facts out, because oftentimes news, because of sound bites, can be not necessarily fair and unbiased, so you only get a part of the story. And Glenn would visit our program to say, wait a second, what you don't know about, like in the Britney Spears case with Kevin Federline and those sorts of things. But we have just a few minutes before we take our first break. If somebody wants to get involved with you or wants to learn more about what you could do for them or someone that they know, you want to share some contact information?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to go to our website, which is fathersandfamilies.org, fathersandfamilies.org. Our contact information's there. People can learn about what we're doing legislatively, what we're doing politically. People can find out where they can get assistance if they need it for their own personal situation. That's the best place to go, fathersandfamilies.org.
Now, we'll also get into whether fathers and families are necessarily your attorneys that represent clients, or you just do behind the scenes kind of help them give and get information with the court systems. And we'll get into more of those details later, because I know we've got a lot to discuss and not a whole lot of time. We thank you so much for watching the Maria Sanchez Show on KDTV.com. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Our guest in studio is Glenn Sachs, Executive Director of Fathers and Families. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Audrey Johnson. Be safe, be legal. Handsfree805.com. I am so delightful to be here in the studio of KADYTV.com. We're here to share with you and to educate with you what Handsfree805 is all about. You could send a text. You could read your email. You can make a phone call, just this, with your voice. Handsfree805.com is the latest, hottest technology that I've experienced a long time, especially coming from South America and being here in America with the latest technology. So please give us a call, 805-754-2063. Be safe, be legal.
Hi, this is Peter Godinez from KDTV.com. I'm here to announce a new show that we're all excited about here called Meet the Boss. Now, this is about all your friends and neighbors who own businesses and being able to support them in their causes and helping them stay healthy. So save this program in your favorites. Make sure you spread it out to your friends. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all here in Ventura County.
Hi, I'm Maria Sanchez, and welcome back to the Maria Sanchez Show. We thank you so much for watching us, and make sure you tell friends, and you can always look at our episodes if you don't catch them live at kadytv.com or mariasanchezshow.com. In studio with us, we have Glenn Sachs. He's the Executive Director of Fathers and Family. Glenn, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
I know you traveled a bit to get here, and we appreciate you joining us in our studios in Ventura. And we've been speaking about what Fathers and Family does. And in our first segment, we spoke about the general picture of fathers and families. And then, Glenn, prior to the break, I asked, are you attorneys, and how do you help people in their quest for getting justice through the system?
Yeah, we're not attorneys. One of the hard decisions we had to make was, are we going to focus on helping men who are in the middle of having problems, helping them with their family law cases, or are we going to pass legislation, do media work, file legal defense cases so that we can change the system going forward? And the hard decision we had to make was, we're going to focus on changing the system going forward. So we do have, if you're you're involved in a family court case, you're having a hard time, we do have information, we do offer referrals, we do offer some assistance, but we're not attorneys, we don't represent people in litigation generally. Our real focus is on legislation and changing the system going forward.
So you lobby?
We do a lot of lobbying. We do a lot of lobbying.
I know, too, because I have a past with Glenn professionally regarding the radio program that I had, and when things were in the news, Glenn would address that because it was topical, which I always was very grateful about that fact, because as I mentioned prior, we don't always get the full story, and sometimes we get several versions of the same story, and so Glenn helped distill through the madness in some regards. But in terms of particular stories, if you learn of them and then that helps you know what, because I know that we've talked, let's say for example, about folks that have been deployed during the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, and then suddenly they're considered a deadbeat, and you've gotten involved in that regard, either bringing the focus to it or letting people know that this is going on, or can you explain to our viewers how it is that you work?
Yeah, I mean, we've done all those things in terms of whether it's media and letting people know or passing legislation. A lot of our work on it started with a case here in Southern California 7 years ago of a guy, 7 or 8 years ago, of a gentleman who was a Navy SEAL. And after the September 11th attacks, he was in Tora Bora in Afghanistan helping to try to hunt down Osama bin Laden and break up the terrorists there. And while he was away, his son was, with the permission of a California family court, or at least the complicity, they allowed his son to be abducted internationally, basically taken to another country. And he was not able to see his son. He was cut off from his child, not even allowed to talk to his child, couldn't get a court to enforce any order. He's being, bankrupted by child support and attorney's fees. And it was such an outrageous case, I wrote about it for a story about it for the LA Times, and it ended up leading to a couple of legislators here in California, Ducheney and Morrow, picking up on this issue and we passed a bill in 2005 to help protect military parents and their parental rights, protect them against family court proceedings that they're not able to attend, and then working against them, child support abuses, all those things. And in the 5 years since then, we've worked with the Department of Defense, and we've helped get laws to protect military parents passed in 35 different states.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really been an issue that's it's really taken off. And right now we've got a bill almost all the way through the California legislature. We expect that Schwarzenegger will sign it within the next month or two. It's probably the strongest military parent protection bill yet, AB 2416. And we're working with the Department of Defense to get those kind of protections in place in all 50 states. We get letters all the time from soldiers they're on the ground in Iraq, they're on the ground in Afghanistan, and they're just being crucified in family court. They're not able to see their kids, they've lost custody, the mother has moved God knows where, they don't even know where their kids are, half their check is going to child support, and they can't even afford legal representation. Just terrible, terrible stories. And it's not just fathers who are the victims of it. I mean, we represented a woman recently, or we helped a woman recently in Florida who she was deployed in Afghanistan, and her ex-husband used this opportunity to kind of take the son and keep the son in Florida, so when she came back from deployment, he wouldn't allow her to have her son back and back to the previous arrangement. So sometimes it's mothers who are targeted by these things too, but terrible thing to be taken advantage of like that and have your relationship with your children imperiled because you went off to serve your country.
And you keep saying when we represented or we got involved, does that mean that you refer them to a cache of attorneys that you represent?
It may mean that we did media work on their behalf. It may mean that we helped get them legal advice. It may mean that we helped connect them with a politician or a legislator who maybe could help them or who was pushing a bill, and we would have the person testify in favor of the bill. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we get involved in these cases.
Now, Fathers and Families exists how financially?
Well, private contributions.
Really?
If you're asking if we get government money, no, we don't get any government money. No, it's just private contributions from our members. Financially in general, we've done pretty well. Obviously, in the recession, all nonprofits are hurting. Those dollars are harder and harder to come by. So we have not been able to expand as much as we would like. There's a lot more good work that we could do if we were able to, really simply hire more people to do it. And our ability to do that has been constrained in part because of the bad economy. But we survive completely on tax-deductible private contributions.
Wow. So since we're on the World Wide Web, that means that folks who are watching us are not necessarily in Southern California, not necessarily in California, not necessarily even in the United States. So do you take contributions from throughout the world, and do you do work outside of the United States?
See, Maria, you're so good to me. I didn't even mention anything about it, and here you are shilling for contributions for us.
Well,
we people contribute throughout the United States and in many other countries too. If anybody's interested in contributing, they can just go to fathersandfamilies.org and click, and you can contribute via the web or by the address where you could send a check is there. We work throughout the United States. There are some states where we have a larger emphasis than others. California, is kind of the jewel in the crown for us right now. That's where we have our largest efforts. We have a full-time lobbyist in Sacramento. We have 5 different bills we've run this year, and we believe each one of them is going to be passed and signed by the governor. Yeah, 5 for 5.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
In terms of pro bono, I would assume that you get some of that help with folks in the legal field or who want to just help. They can't do it financially, but they'd like to do it with their expertise or services.
You mean, are there lots of attorneys who volunteer their time for free to help us? Is that what you're asking? There's some. There's some. And we have volunteers who do a lot of things. But part of our philosophy is that, volunteers, as great as they can be, at the end of the day, everybody's got a mortgage to pay, and they've got a spouse to keep happy, and the children and all that. And so we believe in raising money and paying people and having full-time employees to do the work that needs to be done. And they coordinate a lot of our volunteers, so we do get a lot out of volunteers, but the center has to be paid staff. If all you have are volunteers, you're not going to be effective.
Right. We're going to take a break in just a little bit, and then we'll get into some specific cases that you are aware of and that you helped in terms of the organization or you personally. But why don't you share your website contact information with our viewers?
It's just fathersandfamilies.org.
And we are kadytv.com. We are also mariasanchezshow.com. And you can click to watch this. And since I'm not that technologically savvy, I would assume that it's probably able to send the link. And then, so if you know somebody that has this information that they would benefit from, that would be something that's probably available. Right?
Yeah, and we have a form on the website, a family law help form. So if anybody is looking for help, they can fill out the form. It'll go to us. We'll send them back a referral and links to various information that can help them.
Perfect. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into some of the details. I'm going to leave it up to Glenn whether or not that he's comfortable sharing the names of the parties involved, i.e. if they're celebrities and they're kind of public fodder. Otherwise, like the story that he shared with the deployed troops, and that was just in general terms. Again, you're watching the Maria Sanchez Show on KDTV.com, and we'll be right back with my in-studio guest, Glenn Sachs. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Audrey Johnson. Be safe, be legal. Handsfree805.com. I am so delightful to be here in the studio of KADYTV.com. We're here to share with you and to educate with you what Handsfree805 is all about. You could send a text. You could read your email. You could make a phone call. Just your voice. Handsfree805.com is the latest, hottest technology that I've experienced a long time, especially coming from South America and being here in America with the latest technology. So please give us a call, 805-754-2063. Be safe, be legal.
Hi, this is Peter Godinez from KDTV.com. I'm here to announce a new show that we're all excited about here called Meet the Boss. Now, this is about all your friends and neighbors who own businesses and being able to support them in their causes and helping them stay healthy. So save this program in your favorites. Make sure you spread it out to your friends. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all here in Ventura County.
Hi, and welcome back to the Maria Sanchez Show on KDTV.com. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your eyes. In studio, we have our guest is Glenn Sachs. He's the Executive Director of Fathers and Families. Glenn has been sharing with us in the prior two segments about the origination of Fathers and Families, which is about 13 or 14 years old, what they have done, how the impact is on the 35 out of the 50 in the United States, you've said that you've been involved in helping.
Something like that.
And then now we thought we'd focus this segment on some specific cases that may be noteworthy or may be particularly egregious and or may be the genesis for some of the legislation that you have spawned, if you will.
Spawned, okay. All right. Well, a bill we are working on right now, in fact, we just got it out of the legislature recently, and Schwarzenegger is going to be deciding whether to sign it or not. SB 1188 deals with parents with disabilities and child custody and visitation. A lot of the legislation we do, it grows out of what we hear from our members and supporters,
Right.
their needs, the problems they're having. In this particular case, there were a couple of cases that spurred this. One of them, I won't give her last name, but it's a woman named Maria who suffers from multiple sclerosis.
Okay, not me.
And no, not you. She has she's an adoptive mother of a 12-year-old girl, and the ex-husband basically tried to use her disability against her to get full custody of the girl and exclude her from the girl's life. So Maria contacted us and contacted Senator Rod Wright in Sacramento. Senator Rod Wright's been a real champion for these issues in California. Has done a lot to help protect parents' rights in California. And Rod Wright, working with our lobbyist in Sacramento, Michael Robinson's our legislative representative, does an excellent job there. And we basically crafted a bill that would say that you can't use someone's disability or partial disability as a way to deprive them of custody or visitation. Now, obviously, there are people who have certain kinds of disabilities that are so severe that they really can't care for a child, or particularly if the child's young. We acknowledge that, we understand that. But one thing we've seen a lot of is where it's just used as a family court machination to reduce a parent's time with his or her children. That happened to Maria. Also happened to another supporter of ours in San Diego, a gentleman named Tim, who has been crippled for 2 years because of food poisoning, and he's going to get better.
Dear.
Yeah, it's terrible,
Wow.
but it is terrible. But he is getting better. He is going to make a full recovery eventually. But while he's gone through this terrible ordeal and been in a wheelchair, whatever, he's had to fight like crazy just to protect the time he has with his children. And we don't believe that any parent, mother or father, should have to go through that. So SB 1188 is designed to protect those people. And it increases the burden of proof on the person who's trying to take the parenting time away from the person who has the disability. It's a reasonable bill. It accommodates for the fact that there, as we said, sometimes certain people really can't take care of certain types of children. We believe Schwarzenegger is going to be signing that sometime this summer.
And you mentioned in one of our prior segments that this year, calendar year 2010, you've proposed 5 bills, and all 5 look like they will go into law.
Yeah, I don't want to jinx it,
yes.
but we had a child support bill passed that was signed by Schwarzenegger a few weeks ago. We have the military parent bill. We have the disabled parents bill. We have an alimony reform bill that also is almost out of the legislature that we believe is going to be signed by Schwarzenegger. And again, it's a bill. It's just a balanced approach. It's saying that yes, in certain cases, alimony is appropriate, particularly when one parent, usually the mother, has taken long time away from her career to be the primary caregiver for her children. There's no doubt that hurts her earning capacity. There's no doubt that needs to be accommodated for in family court. But on the other hand, in California, you've got lifetime alimony after 10 years, and there's some parents that, well beyond the time when they could have gone back to work and be making good money and building up a career of their own, they're still taking alimony and sort of dependent on alimony from the ex. So our bill, it's a balanced bill, but it's intended to kind of rectify the situation.
Does that go forward, or is it grandfathered in and is retroactive? How does that work, do you know?
Well, it wouldn't be retroactive.
In other words, families who have divorced and the one is living off of the spousal still to this day.
It would apply starting
Would it?
today.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
starting today and going forward. Yeah. I mean, you can't go back and say, well, 5 years ago you should have paid me this or that. That
Right,
can't
but
do
still
that.
it'll
Going
affect
forward.
those couples
Yeah.
that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's going to have some far-reaching effects. I happen to know a couple people that are skating in that regard.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could have far-reaching effects. But like I said, I feel that we're fair with the bill, and that it's a balanced bill. So we have that, and then we have one other child support reform bill. A lot of problems with the child support system. We hear all the time about deadbeat dads and dads who aren't meeting their responsibilities, and certainly there's no doubt that is true. There's no doubt that there are fathers who have not come through for their kids or not met their responsibilities, or who have just taken advantage of the mother after a divorce, financially. There's no question that exists. But there's also no question that there are a lot of good, decent men that are being really manhandled by the child support system in a whole bunch of different ways. And that not only are they being mistreated, but it's also interfering with their ability to be there as fathers for their children. So, we're working on legislation. We're also working with the California Department of Child Support Services to bring balance into the system so that, yes, the child support, that when it's supposed to be paid, it'll be paid, but it'll be a reasonable amount, and the payors' rights will be respected. So that's basically our legislative program for this year. We're going to be introducing a bunch of more legislation next February. It'll be the beginning of a 2-year session in the legislature. So we believe we can do even more than we did this year. But we're very happy with how things have gone this year.
And what I find refreshing about Glenn is that it's not a man who's bitter and with an axe to grind. He's happily married with 2 children, and
yeah, I've never been inside a family courtroom. Thanks be to God.
Yes.
I hope I never am.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've made up for that. I've had my inordinate share in that regard. That's the yin
you've
and yang.
had your share and my share, I guess.
Yeah,
Yes.
in that regard. And then any kind of salacious little story that you'd like to share that we'd love to hear about, that it got resolved well. We've got just a few moments left.
A salacious story.
In other words, with the Britney Spears, whatever, she was.
Well, I think that was kind of interesting. I mean, that's kind of out of the news now, but I think that was kind of interesting because for a long time you heard that Kevin Federline's a loser and he doesn't have a job, and Britney Spears, is way too good for him, this and that, and then what really ended up emerging was that the more stable and better parent was Kevin Federline, and that he really was there for his boys and was really a good parent, and that Britney Spears was really having some problems, personal problems that she needed help to resolve. And the whole image of it, he ended up getting custody appropriately, I believe, and the whole picture changed. But for a long time, everybody was always dissing on Kevin Federline. The guy was 25 years old. He wasn't a multimillionaire. Mm-hmm. Most 25-year-olds aren't, but somehow that made him a loser. Mm-hmm. He was late night TV, everybody mocking him. It turned out that the guy was a very good father, and he had a chance to show it. And we certainly hope that Britney Spears will, get her act together, solve her problems, so she can play a major role in those children's lives too.
As well, yes, and that ultimately is what Fathers and Family is about, is really about the children and not the abuse of the system anymore and one party being against the other. My whole thing is take the high road so that the children aren't being affected, because that's really who's suffering.
Yeah.
In the squabbling and everything else. And before we run out of time, why don't you give your contact information again?
Just fathersandfamilies.org.
And Glenn Sachs is our guest, the Executive Director of Fathers and Family. And please log on to the website to see if there's any information that you might gain that you didn't gain from our conversation today. And we'll have Glenn back in studio when there is more news to report about. And I'm Maria Sanchez, host of the Maria Sanchez Show, right here on KADYTV.com. Thank you so much for your eyes. We appreciate that.